So if you have high fraud numbers, expect the FCA to come knocking. And we have seen in the last probably 6 months, a hell of a lot of letters and door knocking to firms that have got fraud spikes.
Well, thanks for coming on, Jess. How are you anyway? You good?
I'm very well. A long train journey to get in here, but I am here.
You made it.
I made it.
Good. Well, look, I want to start with a topic that I'm seeing at the moment regarding teams at the moment. Are you seeing any current trends when it comes to teams within financial crime and compliance at the moment?
We are seeing a lot of very interesting trends. I mean, so at the moment I cover a whole host of areas from financial crime and reg compliance. And some of the key trends we're seeing are around complete restructuring of these teams. So we are seeing some firms decide to restructure with offshoring. We're seeing some firms decide to restructure with let's come back to onshoring. We're seeing complete restructuring of three lines defense models. We are seeing brand new technology coming in and trying to get rid of people perhaps too early.
I was going to ask that. Do you think that's a big impact now, the technology?
It's a big impact, but we're not quite there yet. So we're seeing a lot of people try to explore new technologies, trying to jump on the AI bandwagon perhaps a little bit too early to try and improve operational efficiency, to streamline processes, and perhaps look at reducing headcount. But ultimately, we're seeing people try to reduce that headcount a little too early before they have actually explored whether or not the technology works, have they done testing, and can they actually reduce the headcount? And then what we're seeing is that the impact is the existing team members and staff that are still there are having a lot of pressure put on them to do basically double the job. So we're seeing a lot of people end up with very, very heavy workloads and lots of challenges where they're struggling with backlogs and lots of things that they're not able to do their job to their fullest. So it's a really challenging situation at the moment.
And what happens then if they're getting it wrong? I'm guessing lots of firms are getting it wrong, making cuts, and then they're kind of massively behind, need to hire again in those spots they thought their technology could take care of.
They do, yes. So we've seen a few firms sort of strip back their financial crime functions quite heavily, then realise that actually they've got quite a big backlog in whatever it is, perhaps onboarding or maybe transaction monitoring alerts. You don't want to backlog in your sanctions alerts because that's a real problem, but we have seen some really big ones actually. And some of the firms we're working with, even just speaking to some of the people on the ground that are trying to solve these. I did have one lovely lady in tears on a call with me because she admitted that the workload was so extreme and senior management wasn't listening to the fact that they actually needed to hire more people and technology in place to do things like reduce false positives wasn't quite there yet. And they weren't reducing their false positives, and the numbers were still quite extreme. So it's very difficult.
Huge stress on the team and the people in charge then.
It is, but it means that senior management really do need to listen to whether or not your compliance and financial crime risks are actually being mitigated.
Makes sense.
So yes, explore new technologies. There are some great systems and tools out there to improve things like case management, case flows, and reducing false positives. But you need to do it at the right speed and with the right testing to make sure that whatever is implemented fully, completely, and you have the right people doing the right things.
Makes sense.
And enough of them.
Okay, one of the FCA's focus areas currently is around financial crime. What are you currently seeing in that core area at the moment, Jess?
Yeah, it's a big focus for them because it's a big flagship of their strategy. Everyone thinks that financial crime might start taking a back seat at some point, but it absolutely is not and is very much still at the focus. So what the FCA are trying to look at is things like weak risk assessments. So, I mean, we've seen this for a number of years, to be honest, and it's really coming to a bit of a head. So weaknesses in business-wide risk assessments, how those link to customer risk assessments as well, and making sure that firms actually understand what their risk profile is, how this all feeds through into their control framework, and making sure that all of the controls are well thought through, holistic, and actually mapping against those risks. We're particularly seeing this in things like the crypto industry. So lots of firms are really not engaging with what their true risk profile is. And going through the crypto asset registration process, for example, requires firms to really work through what is the product, what risks do you have, who are you engaging with, who are your customers, where are you operating, and building the control framework off that. So it's still looking at weaknesses around those areas that the FCA is looking at.
And is there any even more specific areas they're focusing on within that?
So within that, it's not necessarily the specific areas, it's more about thinking about the whole risk assessment process and the framework, and looking at the quality of the methodology for assessing those. So previously, we used to write very short documents where you could just write a narrative to explain what your risks are. But what you need to do now is deploy a quantitative and qualitative assessment and methodology to really, truly explore what the risk profile is. So the FCA expects to see really clear numerical methodologies behind that. How are you assessing that risk? Look at your inherent risks, look at your controls. How are you evaluating the effectiveness on the quantitative methodology? And off the back of that, what are the residual risks, and how is that all aligned within the methodology? So we can't just do a simple assessment that says, I think my risks are this. It actually needs to be a very, very detailed, clear methodology that's wrapped into your whole risk management framework.
So firms are going to get caught out unless they're hot on that.
Absolutely, and they already are.
I can imagine.
Absolutely. And then another thing that the FCA is really focusing on is fraud. So we all know that fraud scams are everywhere. We had the APP fraud mandatory reimbursement changes that came out. Firms are still implementing those and struggling, but the APP fraud numbers are now filtering through to the regulator, and they're starting to see firms that have spikes in their fraud numbers, and that is where they are turning their attentions. So if you have high fraud numbers, expect the FCA to come knocking, and we have seen in the last probably 6 months a hell of a lot of letters and door knocking to firms that have got fraud spikes.
That's great to know.
Yeah, you need to make sure that your fraud frameworks are very strong, and that's fraud customer facing, monitoring your controls, but also your internal fraud, because we had the failure to prevent fraud requirements also come out, and a lot of firms are still not dealing with, not up to speed at all, and not looking internally about how to manage their internal fraud.
It's a lot to take in, but I guess they've just got to make sure they're aligned.
They've got to make sure they're aligned.
Very quickly.
They've got to make sure that they've got things in place in a clear framework and a clear fraud risk assessment to look at the risks and what are the controls for fraud mitigation.
The thing I'm seeing at the moment from a recruitment point of view, we're getting lots of fintechs inquiring to us about helping them hire when they're going for EMI licenses, but we're seeing a lot of failures. What would you say your sort of insight is, having dealing with a lot of these firms yourself?
Yeah, the EMI application process is a challenge,
I can imagine.
and we are still seeing a lot of failures, a lot of requests to withdraw, a lot of resubmissions, and a lot of time spent on trying to create the perfect application pack. It's a challenge for a number of reasons. Some of the key kind of failure points are minder management not being in the UK. So, for example, if you are a firm operating in Europe somewhere or in the US perhaps, and you want to come and set up in the UK, you've got a number of your people based outside of the UK, but you can't have your key management risk decision makers outside of the UK. They need to be in the UK. And the FCA are looking at that, and they're looking at roles beyond your traditional compliance officer, even things like chief technology officers.
All the core people have to be.
Have to be in the UK. So in terms of hiring, you need to make sure you've got all of your key decision makers in the UK, and they need to be good.
Do you think firms are not educated enough with that then? How are they making that mistake so frequently?
So I think with different regulators across the world, there are different approaches to things like outsourcing.
Of course.
So where you look at where you put your technology operations or your outsourced operations, you might expect to have things like your CTO offshore, but in the UK you can't. So you need to make sure that even if you've got outsourced operations, the key mind and management and decision making for your UK business has to be in the UK. So it's an easy mistake to make because from an operational perspective, it actually makes sense to have some of these roles out of the UK, depending on the structure of the business. But for the UK entity and for the EMI application or whatever application you're going for, get your mind and management in the UK.
And what would you say around first hire, so first compliance officer, MLRO? How could a smaller startup know when to make that hire?
Make the hire early. And I know it's hard because they're not cheap, or good ones are certainly not cheap. And if you have a bad MLRO, you won't get through the application process and it will be more expensive. But you do need to have them earlier than you think, because they need to be involved in creating your documentation and creating the product set. They need to be at the build stage, not just coming in at the tail end just when you're going to do the submission to the FCA. The FCA knows when people have been hired last minute.
Do that,
And the first question they'll ask is, well, do you know the business? Do you know the risk profile? Do you know the product well enough to actually manage the risks? And usually if they've been brought in 2 weeks before submission, they don't. So in the short term, it might look like you're saving money by hiring this person late. But actually, if you want to set up in the UK, hire that person.
Want them from the start,
you want to hire them early in the journey. You have to balance the costs, obviously, but hire them early in the journey so that you can involve them in the product development and the control framework development process.
And how did they get the education piece on that? I think from a recruitment point of view, I find we get lots of inquiries, but I don't think they fully understand when they should be getting the person in place. I feel like they always think it's further down the line.
Unfortunately, most of the time that comes back when I've been asked to withdraw. So we get a lot of people. It's too late. It's too late, and they're going for the second submission, and the second submission is the one that gets through because they actually take it seriously. That's the challenge, and it's annoying because it means firms have to learn the lesson the hard way by going through the first one, coming out the end of it, being asked to withdraw, and then going through the second one. I wish firms could try and hire a bit earlier, but I recognise the challenges.
And the firms you work with then, what would you say the good versus the bad? Like what are firms doing well with the FCA versus maybe some that are struggling?
So some firms that are doing really well hire the MLRO or the compliance early, and they treat that person as part of the strategic management of the business instead of just someone that's going to come in and submit SARs later down the line. They are involved in the product development and really start to build a control framework mapped to that, which is exactly what the FCA wants to see. The firms that are not doing so well are the ones that rush through the creation of their policies and procedures, they rush through the risk assessment, and a lot of these firms don't usually understand actually what their product wants to be. So sometimes they might start the application journey too early, where they're thinking, should we do this type of product and should it have this type of payment flow? That should all be worked out before you start to go through this journey. So it's about a maturity process in a way.
Okay. And what top tips would you give firms that are looking to go for this license for the first time from get-go now?
Gosh, top tips. I would make sure that you get a strong MLRO early that knows the business, has a good profile and can sit in front of the FCA. And then the second thing is to really understand what the product is, I suppose. It sounds really simple, but have you actually worked out your payment flows? Have you worked out exactly who you're going to target, what your marketing is going to be? If you don't know what the product is and you can't explain it to the FCA, you're not going to get yourself approved. No.
What would you say the biggest misconception is about the MLRO?
I think the biggest misconception, actually, it's probably just what I mentioned. It's the MLRO being seen as a weakness and a bit of an expense and just an operational function.
Tick box kind of.
A tick box function that will literally just submit SARs to the NCA. But actually they're not. They are a very strategic part of the business and they need to be involved in the product development from the start. If you just see them as a blocker that is in place to deal with the regulator, you're not going to have an effective product. They need to be seen as someone that is involved in business decision and development.
And what about buy-in then? So if they're working with teams internally, founders, how can someone coming into a business as an MLRO, get buy-in quickly, do you think?
That's a really interesting point, actually. We're working with a firm where the MLRO didn't do that and is really struggling.
Okay.
And the main thing you have to do is speak in commercial terms.
Okay.
So when you're talking about the structure of your team or tool implementation, it needs to be in commercial cost terms. But you also need to, this is very simple, but you need to network with the business. So that's networking with your sales teams, it's networking with your marketing functions, it's networking with all the commercial teams, not just networking with your compliance team. You need to make sure that you are present and known throughout the business. And if you don't do that and you just stay within the compliance and financial crime box, you will not be able to get things over the line. It's a simple piece of internal networking.
Okay. So would you say that's actually one of the biggest challenges then, building that credibility, those relationships from a get-go? And if you don't, then you're obviously not going to succeed.
Absolutely. Yeah. You need to, the very simple one, you just need to be a nice person and get yourself out there and meet everyone and...
Simple stuff, but actually
simple stuff
has to be done.
Listen to people, listen to their concerns. You've been brought in for a reason. Listen to perhaps what it was like under the previous MLRO or what the challenges are, and work with them, but making clear that obviously your role is a risk mitigator.
Apart from being nice, what would you say the successful MLROs are doing better maybe than others?
I think it is around that networking piece and just listening. So a lot of MLROs that struggle will look at a problem purely from a financial crime or compliance risk perspective.
Everything's negative versus solution oriented.
Yes, exactly. Now, of course, you need to make sure that you're mitigating those risks, but it's about listening and then figuring out the plan in line with the regulatory requirements, but also in alignment with whatever the commercial strategy is. So simple in one word, just listen.
Yeah, okay. Jess, what would you say, if you could make one regulatory change, what would that be?
Gosh, this is a very, very difficult one. I think for me, there are lots of guidance documents. There are lots of, you've got the JMLSG guidance, which is about 200, 300 pages. You've got other pieces of FCA guidance. It is everywhere and very complex to try and distill together. This would be very, very difficult, but in an ideal world, if we could have nice, simple to read guidance. In Singapore, for example, the regulator is very good at creating easier to consume guidance notes, because that means that firms can actually read them and understand them a lot easier. And then can I have a second?
Yeah.
I think the second one would be a regulator that's a little bit more open. So what we're seeing is firms struggling with the openness with the regulator. So
very by the book.
Yes. So for example, if you're asked to withdraw as part of an application, they will give you a short summary to explain why. But other regulators around the world might actually sit down with you and just have an open chat
so you
to say,
have a way of going back.
To say, if you did this, you probably would have got over the line. And that's just being a really practical regulator. Now,
would they give you the opportunity to fix it then, or is it already too late?
In some cases they will. But for the FCA, it's very much, you need to go away, you need to figure out how to fix this and then come back for round 2. Which often leads to a round 3.
And how do you personally stay current in fintech regulations yourself?
Everything changes so fast. So I have to try and get lots of feeds in from lots of places. So of course I have all of the email chains and alerts from the FCA, all the regulators. But there's also some amazing people on LinkedIn that I follow that push out lots of really, really good things. But then also there's a whole host of podcasts that I also listen to. So it's about making sure that you're just swimming in the information all the time.
And how long have you been working in this space now? How many years?
Oh, crikey. It's a long time now. But my journey is a difficult one because I'm a career consultant,
Yeah.
which is the worst type of person. Maybe one day I'll go in-house, but I really have spent my career working at 4 different consulting firms, just in financial crime and regulatory compliance consulting, fixing problems. And that's what I really love to do.
I was going to ask you, what keeps you motivated and excited to stay in this space? Is it the fixing problems and making that impact?
It is. I think there are kind of 2 things that keep me in the job.
Yep.
One is the interesting fixing of problems. So all of the frameworks change all the time. Risk profiles change. 1 minute is sanctions with, Russia, invasion of Ukraine. The next minute is fraud. Things change all the time, and it keeps it very, very fresh and interesting. And you have to be at the top of your game, looking at what are the current risks, how do we fix this, and how do I fix it within a commercial budget that's tight for the clients that we work with. But then on the flip side, the other thing that keeps me in the job is the really interesting people that work in the space. So I've got an incredible team. They are all really, really smart, super sharp, and super interested in learning and keeping up to date. That really does. And no matter what level you're at or how many years experience or what you've done before, everyone can bring something new and interesting to the table. And I really encourage everyone in the team to do lunch and learns, to share articles, to share news. And we've got this kind of aura now where everyone's just sharing everything. Amazing. And it keeps everyone up to date. And that's what keeps me in the job as well.
One of the questions we're going to ask, what advice would you give to like a young person, up and coming person looking to, have aspirations to be a deputy MLRO in this space? Any advice?
I hopefully give some useful advice, but I do a lot of mentoring of university students as well. And they are doing some really amazing things. And it's really good to see people that are smart wanting to come into this space. But the biggest thing that they come up against is, how do I get my first role?
That's the challenge.
In this industry. I had another one this morning on my LinkedIn saying, I'm struggling to get that first role. And it's getting that balance right between them having to go out and spend the money on, an ICA qualification in order to get them that first role, or finding a company that will back someone that is just really good at problem solving and analytical thinking and has an interest in it. So I think making that first jump is about building the story behind perhaps your university experience or previous experience and your interest in the space. So when I'm hiring people at a junior level, I'll be asking them, how do you keep up to date with the news? Talk me through a recent story on fraud.
And you're testing their
thinking
and their problem solving.
Their thinking and their interest in the space. I can work with anyone who is interested and is willing to learn. The rest we can train.
Okay, that's good to know.
And then it's looking for people that are just interested in the space. And I would try and encourage all companies to try and do that and to really open their doors to some really amazing young people. But then on the flip side, on the more senior hires, for me in our consulting business, we're looking for people that can really engage with different types of businesses. So 1 minute we might be working with a payments startup. Another minute we might be working with a very large bank. We might be working with a traditional investment platform. We might be working with a B2B lender. You have to be able to be adaptable. So we will start testing people on very, very complex scenarios to make sure that they can flip and understand the risk of the business and start to deploy solutions that are off the back of that. So for me, it's about not just looking at how many years experience or whether or not they've done an ICA course. It's actually about, do they understand the risk profiles? Can they deploy their thinking in different scenarios? So that's how I normally sort of test people. So I suppose from an advice perspective, it's about staying current and really testing yourself on exploring different risk areas.
And what would you say about a candidate maybe from a banking background or pure fintech background looking to get into consultancy?
Well, we get a lot of people that are from the banking background because we've seen
clients,
but a lot of banks are actually letting people go at the moment. So fintechs seem to be holding on to people a little bit, but banks are really, really reducing their headcount. A banking background is very challenging because you've often been doing the same small thing in a small part of the control framework for a long time.
And it's all been set out. Maybe the pace is very different as well.
The pace is different and the tasks you'll be doing are usually the same. But that's where it comes to developing your own story behind what you've done and how you can deploy that in the next environment. Yes, you might have just been doing, I don't know, 5 years on transaction monitoring alerts, or perhaps 5 years doing really specific part of regulatory reporting. But then what do you want to do? How have you started exploring different areas? How can you deploy the learnings from that into different scenarios? So when we look at banking backgrounds, I do actually look at them quite cautiously, but I will really test them on problem-solving skills and adaptability, which is often the bit they haven't been exposed to.
And what would you say the difference is with a consultancy in terms of pace versus maybe a bank or certain fintechs? I mean, a lot of fintechs are very fast-paced, but Thistle, very fast-paced, I'm guessing?
Very fast-paced indeed. And that's the biggest challenge. And actually, when we have people come across from Big Four consulting into Thistle, that's also a very big change.
Because they'll think they're used to fast-paced and they'll say the right thing, but actually coming in and doing it is very different. How do you test that in interviews?
I ask them a lot of questions about, you've said that you would love a fast-paced environment. Now let's work through some scenarios on time management, on working 10 projects at once, on working with lots of different clients. And I will really, really test them on that, because ultimately I can't train that into someone to enjoy a fast-paced environment. Some people really thrive on deeply focusing on one thing for a long time. But unfortunately, you won't have the opportunity to do that here. You're going to have to work on multiple different things.
Others might find it quite overwhelming, I'm guessing.
Exactly. So we need to find something that works for both. And I'm just brutally honest with people when I interview them.
And what about your plans? I've seen you got promoted. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How's the new role going?
The new role is going very well. So my personal background is really in financial crime. So I've done a hell of a lot of work in building financial crime frameworks. But I've done a lot of work in the payments and the digital asset sectors as part of that. So worked a lot with fintechs, worked a lot in different crypto areas as well. So I've taken on oversight of our payments function.
Amazing.
They are an incredible team. And I've also taken on our strategy and oversight of our digital assets.
It's exciting.
It is indeed. And there's a lot of regulatory change in this space. So we need to keep up to date. And we're looking at lots of different incredible things there. But I've ultimately just doubled my team in size. So there's a lot.
Even more fast-paced now.
Even more fast-paced. I'm going to need another holiday.
What about crypto then? How are you finding crypto? Are you seeing there's more buying now from the regulators and people in general?
Not quite.
Okay, we're not there yet.
We are not there yet. So we have seen the FCA's crypto asset roadmap, which is on course for 2026 into 2027. That sets out a framework under FSMA. But it's got so many gaps and questions that we're still waiting on, a number of papers still to come out. And talking to people on the ground, I was literally just speaking to a client this morning that's looking at doing something really specific in the stablecoin space. But the new framework doesn't fully cover everything that they want to do. So we've still got a lot of really exciting entrepreneurial things wanting to take place in the UK, but we don't have the regulatory framework to do it, which means we are seeing some people move out to Dubai and places like that, which is a shame. But the regulator is trying to create a framework. Time will tell whether or not it's actually going to be more of an open door policy, which I hope so, because especially for things like stablecoins, it's a really, really, really good use case.
Stablecoins on the up, definitely. There's a lot more firms getting involved now.
Exactly. We're leaving behind the kind of retail trading. Of course, we're not leaving it behind. There's lots of them out there. But the really exciting things are happening in sort of B2P stablecoin payments.
Awesome. And if you weren't doing this, what would you do? What would your career be?
This might be a bit rogue, but I grew up on a farm. So I'd probably go back to the farm.
It's a big difference.
Lots of sheep. I love sheep. But for now, I'm stuck in the city at my desk solving financial crime and compliance problems.
Amazing. Right, to wrap up, Jess, I've got a couple of quick-fire questions. So, is your morning well planned, or would you say it's chaotic?
My mornings are utter chaos. I might look like I'm an organised person, but I'm utterly chaotic. I live quite far away from London, so it's a very early start. The 5:30 alarm and getting out the house. I'm just always late.
So you're not sat at home having an ice bath?
No. And no matter how many times I put my clothes out and I pack my bag, I'm always late.
Yeah, okay, great. And what about guilty pleasure, TV show or podcast? What's yours?
I think the guilty pleasure, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I listen to a lot of The Rest is Classified, which is a great podcast with a former CIA agent and someone that works a lot in kind of talking about MI5. Some really interesting stories on that one. Okay, awesome. That's interesting. And last question, if you could swap lives with anyone in the world, who would it be? This is very difficult. Have we got a short list? Honestly, this is a very, very difficult one. I think professionally, it'd probably be someone like Christine Lagarde. Because her story, I think, is fascinating. But then perhaps it would be someone who lives, I don't know, in the Lake District somewhere that doesn't do any kind of work and just has a couple of goats and a few sheep. You'd be too bored. Maybe I'd be bored, or I would love it. Who knows? Well, great. Look, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate talking to you. Some great insight to pass on to everyone. And we'll leave it at that. Thanks, Jess. Thank you very much.